Hello students. In our early lecture we have gone through the literary term that is realism, and in continuation of that we have another term that is naturalism. So let us go through the term that is naturalism. Naturalism, the word itself tells us the nature, or that is also a type of human nature. It's a naturalism, means human being can be interpreted as an animal. Of course, man is an animal. Is an animal, and man, being an animal, supposed to have some animal instincts and drives. On the basis of this, the theory has been propounded in the 20th century, because we have seen the 20th century literature or scientific innovation closely associated. What happens in the psychology or in scientific advancement is closely reflected in the literature, or literature is modeled on some of the scientific theories propounded by the scientist. So, naturalism has such a scientific background in its development, and that is what naturalism is claimed to give an even more accurate depiction of life than the realism could give. Naturalism is not just a realism, it is not just a special selection of subject matter, and it's not just a special way of rendering those material in the realistic manner. It is a mode of fiction that was developed by the school of writers in accordance with the particular philosophical thesis, and that is what it is more and more deeply involved. This thesis is a product of the post-Darwinian theory propounded by Charles Darwin in the 19th century. Charles Darwin, who held that human being entirely exists in the order of nature. Human being is an animal in the background of nature, and that is what he does not have a soul or any access to the spiritual world, religious world. Human being is a human being. So, all these spiritual, religious thoughts, faith, beliefs are external, and that is what the scientist who believed that human being is an animal. It doesn't have a caste, it doesn't have religion, it doesn't have any kind of a spiritual or godly say existence or godly faith. So it is all outside. So being an animal, there is the relations that have been cut away, and that relation that makes human being to think as an object in the nature. So it's a, of course, such a being is higher order animal whose drives, whose forces, psychological forces, whose hormonal secretions makes up his psychology and his personality. The two kinds of forces, heredity and environment, are two kinds of forces that are definitely in the drives. Each person has some inheritance, and this inheritance These forces are compulsive forces. They are they are seen in each and every individual human being. These are hunger, drive to accumulate possessions, and sexuality. These characters, as we know, the novel portrays these characters, and these characters are, of course, are modeled on the theory of naturalism. They are made of the self, the powerful instincts, hormonal secretions, and outside the compulsive forces that are around them. And these forces makes us believe that the characters in the novel who exhibit the strong animal drives, and it the confrontation scene, it is rendering such a plot, the story of such a human being, the plot of such a human being makes him to suffer, and that is what the greed and sexual desire, his helpless glandular secretions makes up his character in accordance with the conflicting forces of the society and heredity. And of course, such novels are tragic in the sense. So, we have seen the novelists like Emile Zola, Frank Norris, Stephen Crane, Theodore Dreiser try to present the scientific objectivity of the plot and the incidents that happens. So there is nothing religious, nothing social, or nothing spiritual crisis that takes place in the tragic plot of the hero. ह्या कादंबऱ्यांमध्ये जे हिरो असतात, ह्या हिरोचं चरित्र जे घडतं ते त्याच्या व्यक्तिगत असलेल्या हार्मोनल चेंजेसमुळे, सायंटिफिक हार्मोनल चेंजेस, बिहेवियरल चेंजेस, सिक्रेशन्स ज्याच्या शरीरामध्ये जे घडतात त्या सिक्रेशन्सचा तो प्रोडक्ट असतो. आणि असे जे कॅरेक्टर्स आहेत ते समाजाच्या असलेल्या, त्याच्या व्यक्तिगत आणि समाजाच्या असलेल्या कंपल्सिव्ह फोर्सेसमधून ते घडत असतात. तिथे कुठल्याही सामाजिक, ऐतिहासिक, धार्मिक किंवा स्पिरिच्युअल म्हणजे आध्यात्मिक असलेल्या गोष्टी त्याच्या ट्रॅजेडीसाठी किंवा त्याच्या स्टोरीमध्ये प्ले करत नाही, तर त्याच्या असलेल्या ह्या कंपल्सिव्ह फोर्सेसपासून सेक्स ड्राईव्ज किंवा सायकोलॉजिकल एलिमेंट्स, कन्फ्लिक्टिंग फोर्सेस, त्याचं इंटरनल कन्फ्लिक्ट, यामधून त्याची ट्रॅजेडी घडत असते. अँड दॅट इज व्हॉट वी हॅव सीन आर रिफ्लेक्टेड इन द लिटरेचर. सो द हिरो इज बाउंड टू दिस कंपल्शन्स, आणि हे जे कंपल्शन्स आहेत त्याच्या सायकोलॉजीमध्ये असलेल्या, याच्याशी तो इज बाउंड टू. ओके, यामुळे सगळं त्याच्या संदर्भात घडत असतं आणि म्हणून त्याची सायकोलॉजी ही डिसइंटिग्रेट होते आणि त्याची ट्रॅजेडी जी आहे ती स्टोरीमध्ये रिफ्लेक्ट झालेली पाहायला मिळते. सो द एंड ऑफ दिस सच अ नॅचरलिस्टिक नॉवल इज युजली ट्रॅजिक. As we have seen in classical or Elizabethan tragedy, because of the heroic but losing struggle of the individual mind will against God, enemies, circumstances, the protagonist of the naturalistic plot is bound to this, and that is what is wiped out in the plot. So we have this type of incidents, plot developments that takes place in accordance with the naturalistic theory. We can go through some of the examples by the novelist who propounded this or expounded this theory in rather objectifying in the plot of the novel. One of such a novel is Thomas Hardy Jude the Obscure. Had Thomas Hardy largely substituted the cosmic determinism for biological and environmental determinism. Various plays by Eugene O'Neill, Norman Mailer's Second World War II novel Naked and Dead, as we have seen the realistic novel by William Dean Howells, A Modern Instance, Emily Zola's Nana, Theodore Dreiser's American Tragedy, brings us Joyce's Ulysses. Some of the aspects of this novel, aspects of this novel brings us very close to the examples, and we can expound and we can write in detail the compulsive forces that plays a very crucial part in the writing and in the tragic plot of the novel. So, when we discuss about this naturalism, human being is said to be the product of the nature. Rather than thinking of his social or religious needs, religious relations, the man is isolated as an animal in accordance with the nature. Just like other animals and birds from the three worlds, man is supposed to be on the land, and that we see is living in accordance with all those, say, hunger that other animals have. But being a strong and higher animal from the rest of the animals, man is supposed to be intellectual and psychologically strong. But that turns out in the hereditary and his environment makes him, his body or his psychology, thinking to think about, and that is what we have seen in the novels. So, like this, we have these so-called beautiful examples where the novelists have propounded and created such protagonists who suffers in such a compulsive forces like hunger, sex, desire, thirst, and everything that comes from the basic needs. So, the tussle or the conflict of this compulsive process while living in the society, he suffers, and that is what such a protagonists are wiped out, and that we see happens in the naturalistic novels. So, like this, we have studied this particular term. This is a short term, and that is what we have to just read and go into the details for these purposes. For reading purposes, as we know, a glossary of literary terms by Amateur Brahms, the Routledge Dictionary, at the same time some of the beautiful novels that you can take the example of, or the plot you can refer, that are available on the internet also. So, some of the examples that you can take and refer to while expounding this, illustrating this topic, that is naturalism. I hope you will understand and try to interpret. I hope that you will also go through the notes that I have shared earlier. So, thank you here, and see you in the next video lecture. Bye.